I have the following statement attributable to the spokesperson for the Secretary General on Pakistan. The Secretary General takes note of the ongoing protests that have erupted following the arrest of former Prime Minister Imran Khan yesterday in Islamabad and calls for all parties to refrain from violence. He stresses the need to respect the right to peaceful assembly. The Secretary General urges the authorities to respect due process and the rule of law in proceedings brought against former Prime Minister Khan. Turning to Sudan, today, the Undersecretary General for Humanitarian Affairs, Martin Griffiths, spoke by telephone with frontline responders, including doctors and engineers in the capital, Khartoum. In the call, Mr. Griffiths heard firsthand about this community-led humanitarian aid response and their courageous efforts to provide food, shelter, and emergency health support amid the ongoing threat of violence and looting. He commended the resilience and creativity of the Sudanese people, stressing that we need to support them. We and our partners continue to ramp up our efforts to respond to the crisis. Meanwhile, the World Food Programme plans to scale up emergency assistance to some 4.9 million people in the coming months in areas where the security situation allows. WFP aims to prevent and treat moderate acute malnutrition for 600,000 children under 5 and pregnant and breastfeeding women. WFP warns that food insecurity is expected to surge to record levels in Sudan due to the conflict. More than 19 million people, or 2/5 of the population, would be affected. To ensure the flow of critical aid and humanitarian personnel, the UN Humanitarian Air Service, managed by WFP, is restarting regular flights between Port Sudan and Addis Ababa. For its part, the UN Population Fund warns that women and girls displaced by the conflict are increasingly at risk of gender-based violence and sexual exploitation and abuse. UNFPA says access to prevention and response services is severely limited in the capital, Khartoum, and across the country. That's due to shortages in fuel and supplies, as well as the destruction and looting of healthcare centers and hospitals. We are working with our humanitarian partners to set up safe spaces for women and girls in states hosting internally displaced people. UNFPA is also helping expand remote services to support survivors of gender-based violence. We have an update from our peacekeeping mission in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, MONUSCO. UN peacekeepers are conducting joint operations with the Congolese armed forces against the Allied Democratic Force, which have been perpetrating attacks northwest of Beni since the 27th of April. As part of this operation against the ADF, called Operation Teteza, peacekeepers are also patrolling along to deter the movement and ability of armed groups to harm civilians. In Jugu territory, in Ituri province, MONUSCO reports it has established a base on the shores of Lake Nyamamba, enabling it to better engage with communities and respond to their security needs. Yesterday, peacekeepers also responded to a Codeco attack against a group of internally displaced people near Lokpa, southeast of Jugu. The attack caused panic among the population, and the mission deployed a patrol to facilitate their return to the nearby Savo site for displaced people. We have a trip announcement from our peacekeeping colleagues. The Undersecretary General for Peace Operations, Jean-Pierre Lacroix, will travel to Kosovo from the 11th to the 14th of May. He will then travel to Serbia from the 14th to the 16th of May. Upon arriving in Pristina, he will participate in an event to mark the 5th anniversary of the UN Kosovo Trust Building Forum, which is an opportunity to take stock of the work accomplished as well as to highlight the next step in the UN mission in Kosovo's trust-building work at the grassroots level. He will then meet with senior government officials, as well as religious leaders and civil society representatives, including women leaders and international partners. He will also visit an UNMIC-supported multi-ethnic youth center in the town of Gracanica, which aims to strengthen youth involvement in local decision-making. Together with the special representative of the Secretary General and head of UNMIC, Caroline Ziadeh, Mr. Lacroix will then head to Belgrade, where he will engage with senior government officials. Throughout the visit, he will meet and interact with colleagues serving in UNMIC and the UN system. This morning, the Security Council held its semi-annual debate on Bosnia and Herzegovina, and in the afternoon, there will be closed consultations on the situation in the Middle East. Special envoy for the Middle East, the special coordinator for the Middle East peace process, Tor Venesland, is expected to update council members on the recent developments. We issued a statement yesterday expressing the Secretary General's sadness at the news of the passing of Kemal Dervis, former administrator of the UN Development Program. Mr. Dervish was a remarkable leader who dedicated his career to striving for equality and social justice and eradicating poverty in all its forms. As the first UNDP administrator from the Global South, Mr. Dervish took a lead role in supporting countries in overcoming crises and vulnerability and bringing the UN development system together around common goals. The full statement is online. And today is the third International Day of Argania, celebrated under the theme Socioeconomic Development and Sustainability of the Argan Ecosystem. The argan is a tree native to Morocco. The celebration aims to share knowledge and practices from the argan production sector in support of food security and sustainable production and consumption patterns. And that is it for me. Yes, Amelie.
Thanks, Farhan. My colleague Arman Soldin has been killed yesterday in Ukraine doing his job, reporting on the war for AFP. Any comment from the Secretary General?
Yes, certainly. We condemn all attacks against journalists, and including the killing of your AFP colleague. You'll have seen that the UN Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization has also come out with a full statement also condemning this attack, and we echo the sentiments of our UNESCO colleagues. Yes, Edie.
Thank you, Farhan. Is there any update on the meeting in Istanbul on the Black Sea Grain Initiative?
The one update I can tell you is that I can confirm officially that Martin Griffiths, our Undersecretary General for Humanitarian Affairs, is in Istanbul, and he will participate in those talks tomorrow. Yes, Deji.
Since yesterday, the situation in Gaza deteriorated with more rockets and more operations from both sides. What does the Secretary General has to say on the ongoing situation there?
Well, the Secretary General is very concerned. Of course, you'll have seen what Tor Venesland said yesterday about the situation. And since that point, we've seen additional Israeli airstrikes as well as Palestinian rocket fire towards Israel. As of this morning, the UN has confirmed that 15 Palestinians have been killed, including 10 civilians. That's 3 girls, 1 boy, 4 women, and 2 men. And our colleagues are trying to verify reports of additional fatalities. Meanwhile, the border crossings with Gaza have been closed. One of the things that is a consequence of that is that it's prevented the scheduled entry of about 600 truckloads of goods carrying vital items such as food, medical supplies, and fuel. And so we're hoping that that can be resolved soon. And as I pointed out, Mr. Venesland will brief the Security Council by video conference this afternoon in closed consultations.
Has Mr. Venesland talked to Israeli government on this issue? Because it seems the Israeli government thinks they are ready to expand their military operation.
Well, yes, Mr. Venesland is in touch with all of the parties. He wants to make sure, as does the Secretary General, that there's no escalation of this conflict and that all parties go back to a resumption of the previous situation and avoid and exercise maximum restraint.
My next question is on Ukraine. Many European countries, they voiced their intention to enlist Wagner Group as the terrorist group. I just want to know what's the position from the United Nations?
Well, that's a decision for countries to make in their own regards. We don't take a position on this one way or another, but obviously countries can make their own decisions as they see fit.
But will the United Nations enlist Wagner Group as terrorist, if possible?
The bodies of the United Nations that maintain lists of
Security
terrorism
Council
are run by the Security
Yeah.
Council, which has taken no position on this. Abdelhamid.
Thank you. I want to follow up with my colleague. He said,
Hold on just one second. Can you raise Abdelhamid's volume, please? Oh, no, just 1 second, please. Okay, try now.
okay, thank you. First, the number of Palestinians killed already is 21, including women and children, like you just mentioned. I want to follow up with a question I raised yesterday.
Yes, on that, like I said, our colleagues are trying to verify reports of additional fatalities. Those are not yet verified on our end. Yes, please proceed.
Yes. I want to follow up with my question yesterday. I asked you if the Palestinians have the right to defend themselves, and you said yes, of course, that's your words. Now, Palestinians either under occupation or under siege. They don't have tanks, they don't have air force, they don't have cannons, they don't have missiles. That's the primitive means they have to use it because they have the right to defend themselves. Do you agree with this analysis?
My point to you yesterday was everyone, all peoples, have the same rights as each other. At this point, no form of escalation, no form of military escalation is in the benefit of either the Israeli or Palestinian people, and we are calling on all of them to exercise maximum restraint. Okay.
Are they equal? Are they equal? I mean, do you see the two parties are equal, and when you call for restraint, you are calling like two armies, two countries?
We are calling for restraint equally from all sides. Yes, Yvonne.
It's just a follow-up, Farhan. The 600 truckloads of goods, they're stuck at which border? In which country?
Those are stuck at the borders between Israel and Gaza.
Okay. And what's on board the trucks?
Like I said, food, medical supplies, and fuel. And one of the consequences, by the way, of that is that if the fuel doesn't get in, there's a chance that the Gaza power plant will actually has already been forced to reduce operations. And as a result, until they get fuel, the provision of electricity in Gaza is now being reduced to 12 hours per day on average.
Okay, and sorry, just to be clear, 600 truckloads, are they already loaded? Are the goods already loaded onto the trucks, or are they in warehouses on the border?
This is the scheduled entry of
Okay.
600 truckloads. So we would need clearances in order to move the trucks in. Yes, Edie.
Farhan, over the weekend, an aid convoy put together by the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, ASEAN, was attacked in Shan State in Myanmar. And I wonder if the Secretary General has any comment on that.
Certainly our country team in Myanmar did react to this and condemn this attack. And obviously, we believe that that the convoys of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations must not be attacked by anyone. Okay, Amelie?
Just a follow-up on Sudan. Yesterday you mentioned Martin Griffiths' proposal to the parties to some kind of humanitarian access. Do you have any update on that?
I have no follow-up on that. Obviously, it was a good sign that this was discussed in Jeddah, but we'll have to see further what the parties themselves do. I believe Michelle Nichols first, and then Stefano.
Thanks, Farhan. A question on Syria. Obviously, after the earthquake, Syria gave the UN access to 2 extra border crossings for 3 months. I believe that 3 months is coming to an end in the next few days. Has Syria, given any indication to the UN that you might be able to use those border crossings beyond the 3-month deadline? And would the UN like to be able to use those extra border crossings? Thanks.
Well, as to the second part of your question, certainly we would. It's important, especially at this stage, that we get as much aid in as possible, and those extra border crossings are essential for that effort. So we are continuing to be in touch with our Syrian counterparts, and we hope that this permission to use the border crossings will continue past the current phase. Stefano.
Thank you, Farhan. International Organization for Migration, they're going to have the few days on the 15th election for the new Director General. Amy Pope, the deputy, is a candidate for United States. President Biden just did a statement where he invites all the countries to vote for her. Antonio Vitorino, he's the actual director, that is also a candidate. Does the Secretary General have any preference?
That's a very odd question. The Secretary General eventually announces who the person will be, and so we'll wait for that announcement.
So, but does he thinks that he's awkward on list, that the deputy director, he's also a candidate, or there is this situation?
Stefano, the entire point of the process is to find who the best candidate is for the list, and we will make that announcement when it comes. Pam?
Sorry for the delay. The White House just announced that Prime Minister Modi of India will be at the White House in June. Do you expect the Secretary General to find a way either in New York or Washington to meet with him? That's the first question.
I don't have any meeting to announce at this point, or for that matter, travel to Washington to announce at this point.
And second piece of a different question is, is there any possibility of Martin Griffiths speaking to all of us tomorrow or anytime in the next few days? I guess that's just a request.
We'll certainly try to get him to talk to you the next time he's available. I very much doubt that he'll be free tomorrow, which I think is going to be a busy day for him, but we'll see when the next time can be. Deji?
I'm sorry, and the final is just any updates on the Taliban?
Nothing so much beyond what I told you yesterday. Deji?
Thank you.
Today there is a baby born in the UK with using an experimental technology that combining DNA from 3 people, not 2, 3 people. Some people worried that if this could be a slippery slope, that people not to, for those parents who want to make their baby to be stronger and taller, so it started to modification of the gene of the baby. What would be the position of the United Nations on this issue of, the experiment of DNA which might cause some, how to say that, moral issues here?
On the one hand, the use of DNA offers the promise of many significant advances, for example, in the fight against different diseases. So all scientific progress on this front is to be encouraged. At the same time, there always needs to be a clear sense of ethical guidelines for scientists as they go along this process, so that they are able to avoid any potential pitfalls from this process.
Are we going to see a Jurassic Park soon?
That's a movie, as you know. Yes, Linda.
Thank you, Farhan. Going back to the Black Sea Initiative, I was just wondering, Ukraine has said in the past, we know that Ukraine is exporting grain or gather small amounts of grain through the Danube River, and has indicated that if the Black Sea Initiative doesn't continue, that might be an alternative way of exporting grain. My question is there any discussion or involvement or guidance being given perhaps by the UN in terms of trying to develop an alternative if the other one fails?
I think at this point we're concentrating on making sure that our current program succeeds and continues. I don't think it's helpful at this stage to bring up any idea of alternatives. And with that, let me turn the floor over to Paulina Kubiak.